Hi, this is gonna be a quick update on my current edition of my book, and I'll just scroll through. Um, this page is updated. Well, the page before this one, I removed that one. Yeah, I didn't like it, but from this point on, I'm trying to simplify my book, so as well as condensing some concepts into fewer pages. So like this page, this page, this page, I'll try to contract them into the kind of setup that I'm doing here. And let me zoom out a bit. This page, slightly updated. I'm not sure if I showed you guys, but this part is very important. This part, I could explain it, but it's just comparing one to another by using the magnitude in connecting one of the points to the other to get to a shared magnitudinal geometry based from two predetermined magnitudes, but I'm not really gonna get into that because I'm not that much of a mathematician, and John Gabriel probably explained it much better than I did right now, but whatever. Anyways, moving on. This part is also explained by John Gabriel better, but I just wanted to put it into a image like this, and I'm getting into how to explain what I'm actually trying to claim with more clarity, so that people wouldn't just, how do I say, misinterpret some of the things in this book, especially this part. I'm not sure if I updated this or whatever, or if I showed it in the video, but this page itself used to be two other pages, at least, that's merged it into one image. And I did equal here, but it's more like a ratio, not, but it's, yeah. I have to use clearer language that's self-consistent to everything else in a book, which is not complete. So you gotta keep things with an open mind. This part I could simplify later. Let me zoom out again. Since the only important part is the square parts, and this part is self-explanatory if you know basic geometry. And not sure if I showed you this part. This angle is wrong. If this is what it should be, the reasoning, you could just read carefully and you might get it. So the angle value should be this, but that means the angle value for this is wrong, which is why I put wrong angle value for this, because this is what GeoGebra mistakenly attributes this angle as larger than it actually is. and the reasoning for that I'm working on, but some of it's explained in algebraic form, and this page I should really fix up. Some of it needs clarification or self-consistent improvements with other pages improvements, like the equal signs. They could be switched around with the colons. I'm not sure if I should keep this page. I'm not sure if I should keep this one or this one actually, but this one I might keep because this is very important. This is also important, but not really, because this is just based upon assumptions based upon 4 over square root of 5 or 4 square root of 5 to the power of negative 1 as the measure, or not the measure but the ratio that is equal to that measure if and only if this equals to the same measure of 1 as the circumference to the diameter of 1. So there's a 1-to-1 in a very roundabout sense. And some of it shouldn't be really worth putting on, but I just put it on here because some of you had asked me before as to some proportion based questions on the pyramids and such. Well, maybe not on YouTube but on other places, so this is why this is here. I updated this. I actually screwed up this part in the previous editions and actually had the wrong figure as like one of these numbers was actually 81 yeah, and it used to be 87, but that's a printing error mistake on my part, and the page that I based this off of, which many of you should already be aware of, the book that I more or less copy pasted but like in content, but not really copy pasted because this is all done in GeoGebra. And this part I've added these things so that the relationship could be kind of understood, as well as this part. Yeah, I had the 7 down here, and 21 is really like 10 and 11 together, so this is like the sum parts, and this is also the sum of these two, which is below this. And this part will be scrapped, this part will be kept, this might be kept, I don't know, this will be kept. I should get into this symbol later, but I'll get to that last. I'm not sure if I should keep this page altogether. It's kind of redundant, especially this part, because this part is really implied to the juxtaposition of this part to this part. So, I try to cut back on how much, frivolous stuff I want to put in. And here's this. I might scrap this because I don't think it's necessary. But this part could be used in another diagram that looks vaguely similar to this, which I could get into in a separate image. And I don't know if I should keep this part because there's some okay, so if I added this part into here, it would be like 11 layers without counting the bottom as a layer in itself, which doesn't exist, which will make it 12 layers or 12 tiers technically, I guess. I'm not sure, depending on how you count the concentric circles. But and getting to the concentric circles part, I'm gonna go off in a tangent, but people don't understand that the difference between a ratio and a fraction, which the fraction is a representation of a common measured unit that is used against another measured common magnitude compared to that unit. I'm not sure if I explained this right, but basically the C over D value for this is not the same as the C over D value for this, and vice versa, because these are all different measured magnitudinal lengths, right? So they only share angular 360 altogether, but there's no rotation in the zero, the center, because there's zero magnitude there. It's actually not there at all. So if you try to claim that a zero magnitude in itself exists is a delusion. So the ratio is not the same as the fraction. So if you want to try to claim there's a true relationship between a circumference to its radius or its diameter, it's really in ratio and not in the measured fraction of that ratio dependent upon its unit of measurement as the basis for distinction between different measured magnitudes of different magnitudes. Since if you don't compare, you don't know, and all units are based on comparison of a chosen magnitude as the unit. And all numbers, by the way, are known by the chosen unit, measured unit, as the consequent, which the antecedent part has to fit in, magnitudinally speaking, has to fit in the same amount or multiples of that consequent value. So John Gabriel has made a recent video on this, but I'm not sure if I explained it right, but whatever. This part, this is more metaphysical stuff, so this is asinine actually. But contextually speaking, it's this part is really presumed to have partaken in totality and all that, which this part is the extrinsic attribute of the one. So it's in terms of the ratio and not the measure in itself. So this part is not really about the measure, but metaphysical representation. But yeah, so don't take this too mathematically speaking, because it's not. And I'm not sure if I made that clear or not. But I still use fractions in this stuff because it's a metaphysical thing and not a mathematical thing. So I hope some people get when I'm using one thing over another, because if you don't have the understanding, you might conflate the two together, and that would really throws things off. Okay, I think I redesigned this before I showed it to you guys again here. I'm not sure if I showed you guys this in the previous video. I might have. And I think I updated some of these. There's a spelling error in this. This is the recent upload I had done on the website. Excuse me. Yeah, I didn't fix this part. I'm going to fix it later. Throughout this year, I have to add more terms in, and so don't think of this as like truly definitive in a sense. Okay, and this part is new. Oh boy, I took some time to really try to understand what Ken Wheeler is trying to say and what the various late Neoplatonists has tried to synthesize, and this is basically the result of it. And by further exegesis, so to speak, of the metaphysical implications that I've been revealed to, not by others directly, but using their line of reasoning to come to my own deeper reasoning behind what they're trying to convey. So these unities, the one all one, and the unified, the Mises' paradigm had the one in itself, or had the ineffable before the one, but the ineffable in itself doesn't really exist, but it's more like a linguistic appeal to claim that ineffable is actually the one, but Damasus distinguishes between the named one from the actual one, since the named one and the forms basically like comes together. They're like a pair before the unities before the unities actualizes the potential distinctions between the one and everything, totality panta. So this ordering I had is primarily relies on Ken Wheeler's paradigm, but with some slight changes which he had news over here, but I instead had news down here instead, so that it'll be tied to megethos or magnitude or eidetic emanation, or the the expression of the eidetic form towards emanation, as meant the actualization of the causal form, which in potential is not the form in itself, but exists in the unities, which is why the eidetic reversion doesn't really exist in a sense, for it's not in partaking that in the form by any means reversion or true return into the one. But this is more like a godhead thing, and this is like God, so to speak. I'm not trying to get too literal, okay? And anyways, the dark parts, which if you look carefully, the dark lettering and the lines are done on purpose. I'm not sure if you could tell, but yeah. The priority is 1, 1, 2, 3, 5 before I get into the 1, 2, 3, 4 thing, which the 1, 2, 3, 4 is more like a intermediary how do I say, actions or relations between the 1, 1, 2, 3, 5 Fibonacci sequence based lowest pressure mediation, or how to say, the path of least resistance, since there's like other kinds of sequences that still approximates towards phi, but like there's lots of them really, but there's only one mode that is the least contrived that reaches to phi, which is why 1 and 1 comes first before 2 and 3 and 5. And I've used this symbol, which used to be this is a sideways Norwegian, I think, generally Scandinavian word or vowel, but I'm not using that for that purpose, but for using this to distinguish it away from 0, and made it sideways, so it made it distinguish away from the vowel that this is borrowed from, as the means to convey that it's not 0 in itself, but more like the apparetos part, which is conveyed here further in explaining these things in this part, which I fixed some parts to be more consistent to this page. And so Ken Wheeler's 1, 1, 2, 3, 5 paradigm has the one, the nous, the megethos, or the magnitude or the greater, and hayo and on. But besides switching that, I basically had ordered this from top down, left, right. So however, all of the all the files, all this, they all like they could go from this direction to this direction. They could be like skipped around or whatever order. It doesn't ultimately matter because they share the same hypostasis, which is the point of why I did it like this, so that could kind of draw out more distinctions that can be interwoven between this. So this and this has this between it. This has some relation with this, and this is a more of a visual thing as means to try to come to realization of the interwoven, interconnective nature of everything in this paradigm that I've drawn out from other people's research, which people recognize this from Plato, and this from somewhat Aristotle, but worded in a different manner. So this part, the 4, is really not too important. Yeah, at the same time, the way from noesis to mathesis to doxa to physis is the same from physis to doxa to mathesis to noesis, but it is, these things are all like all the trappings that humanity generates from their omniscience, so to speak. Since like these things, this 4 is actually not that far off from Plato's divided line section, but if you think about it in a different way, it has some other tie-ins with other stuff concerning how to like realize certain natures on corporeal reality, as well as the means for intellective conception, or in other terms, intellection, or understand or conceptualization of realization on the nature of certain things, which leads to its mentation that can be learned, which leads to its embodied state that unifies the implications, which is then is said of corporeal reality, or vice versa, inversely, or you could say this is related to this and this is related to that, or whatever. It doesn't matter ultimately, because they're all towards upwards and downwards relation and side-to-side relation, which these also have side-to-side relation, like, so it could go this way and looping back and looping back this way. Like all of these has that nature to them, but people might realize that the way I've had it like this and the way I have it like this might have something to do with how Damasius and Proclus try to conceptualize their things, but I have it in a different order, but that order is not that different, ultimately speaking, because they're very nuanced stuff. And since the gray parts are intermediaries, so to speak, they don't really exist in themselves, which is a big claim because people think this and this is this and this or whatever, but not really, I would say. Which distinctions of peras, aperion, and micton, or yeah, micton, yeah. These distinctions could be said of the eidetic magnitudinal expression as well as the nous in itself. Trying to understand this or understanding itself in these terms, which will be like this, trying to understand this as this. So this part is more real, being life intellect, so to speak, for Proclus' paradigm. But Damasius' paradigm have the precision aspect of it as the top, and this part as the second, like next to this part, and having the unified as the third, which is the bottom of this and this, but I have it as the top of this. And the reason behind that in this ordering is so that I want to explain or even posit that the Godhead Trinity part or the one in its activity is ultimately undifferentiated divine attribute of the one. So even though this is here, this is not actually above this, but in terms of intermediary act, a relation of sorts, it fits here better than it would fit as a upside down triangle with this from this order. And you could get into that when you read Damasius' book on this topic on problems and solutions concerning first principles, I think was the title of the book that was translated into English. Excuse me. And anyways, going back to this part, I fixed some terminology and symbols that I use. This isn't actually a cut to begin with, but explaining that is, it's like saying like, did you have to cut a line to make a line to begin with, which the answer is no. And likewise, did you have to cut a circle in order to make a circle to begin with, which is no. So this could be wrapped around in a circle, and if you do that, this part, matter and nous, the distinction or the demarcation line between them kind of disappears in a sense as it wraps around in itself, which this part is kind of similar to this part, but in using Plotinian hypostasis based ordering of the Plato's divided line section. And I changed the color to be gray for this part. and change some terms again. As I said, you might notice those terms when you compare to my older books, versions of the book which I have uploaded in the past. So you could see all my mistakes in the past, as well as what I removed in the past, or what I changed in the past, or whatever. And that's pretty much it. I think covered most of the bases that I wanted to explain. I only changed the two part, really. Oh, this part, yeah. This part is new. This part is new. This part is a truncation of what used to be this part, and this part is a simplified version of another diagram. This diagram here, simplified version of this. I am not done with this, but I will be uploading less on the updates on my book, because I have to add more context, and doing that will be another task altogether. So, which viewer feedback might help in concept, but in actuality, it might get people to steal my contents, which is not that far out of a stretch to come to that conclusion based on what I've seen people do online. And if you really wanted to support me with monetary value, you could don't send me any money to this PayPal, which I don't have a PayPal under this, okay? But I do have a PayPal, but not under this email, which I may get public in that, but I won't do that in public for now, but it might become public later. Before I finish off, I gotta explain some of the things that changed in this part. I switched up the terms. I have conveyed distinctions of certain art forms that does not really fit that neatly in the paradigm that Ken used to have in his older book, or older book I say, but he hasn't released his updated version of the third edition of his magnetism book, so I had to add in the newer terms that he used from his newer articles that he releases online, which is why some of these changed to be more accurate to the source material that I've visualized for myself, really, because this is really my own Book of the Dead, which is a funny thing to say, but you might understand contextually what I'm trying to do if I say that this is my Book of the Dead, because this is really more of philosophical endeavor to expedite my own cultivation of wisdom, which for this life and for the departure of this life. So before I depart, I try to answer all the questions that I seek, and as well as critiquing my own understanding of things, which is why this is me taking notes to understand wisdom better and to self-cultivate the truth in the truth through self-engaged dialectic um, analysis. Well, I don't know. I'm kind of said enough, I guess. And there's one thing that I want to say that where is it? All right, this part doesn't work as well. Okay. Where is it? I wanted to talk about before I finish this recording as to what I mean by irreducible, which is the Greek term used that is poorly translated as elements, but it's actually irreducible elements, which is elemental in what defines something as that thing with the least descriptions to arrive to that form of what it's being described sufficiently and efficiently and irreducibly to conjoin that understanding with the form of what that is. I think it's called stoicheon or something. I'm not sure. Someone would be able to say those words better. I'm not a Greek speaker, and I don't translate stuff into Greek as much. I only translate like specific words. Not translate, but like I study specific words contextually to the paradigm that it is used within to arrive to conclusions that I think somewhat or sufficiently defines that thing in itself. So yeah, if you guys got any questions, you could just ask me in the comments or wherever else that you try to contact me. And what am I doing? I am trying to again improve this, but at the same time I don't want to keep you guys too up to date, but I have to, well, I've been compelled to be more specific, to upload my further clarifications on the things that I've come to understand, so that people won't claim things that they never actually understood to be theirs when I have already done it before them. And that's it for now, I guess. But I am writing a write-up on all this, but I have to purify or purge some of these pages to be condensed to the point of being irreducible, which is what I'm trying to arrive to, the irreducible archetypes of various natures. I'm tired. I spoke enough. My voice is crackling. Uh, yeah. What a weird, abrupt way to finish.